Welcome to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. I'm your host, Austin Becker, and this is your home for adventure, travel, addiction, recovery, the outdoor and ski industry, and of course, redemption. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. This week, we have a special guest, Brody Broderick. He is a skier out of Utah that I recently connected with in Winter Park at the Winter Park Film Festival. Brody had a film about his skiing and the adaptive ski world and sit skiing, and the guy frickin' rips. So without further ado, I'll let you introduce yourself, Brody.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me, Austin. My name is Brody Broderick, as Austin had said. A little bit about my story. On the back end, in 2016, I had a spinal cord injury from a skiing accident. We were looking at this little resort in southern Utah between here and St. George. It's in a place called Beaver, and the ski resort is called Eagle Point. Um, and my dad had actually seen it on a local news program sharing about local small town places to go and get out and into the outdoors and recreate. And so we decided to go down there and go have a ski weekend. And so it was our first time skiing down at this little resort. Um, I think we were spending two or three days there, maybe two ski days. Um, and then the first ski day, everything was great. We had a lot of fun, kind of exploring the resort. The terrain over there isn't well too extreme, which I'm fairly used to skiing over at Snowbird, because that's where my roots ultimately were. After high school, I started skiing snowboard. Before high school, I was skiing Sundance.
Yep.
So that's kind of how my progression went. But when I was down at this resort, I felt like I wanted to just find anything that I can jump off. Like, let's see all their big features. Let's see how I can make this place have a little bit more extreme nature to itself, even though
Yep.
it's got these chill, flowy, rolly vibes. And it was actually a great weekend down there as it relates to the conditions. It just dumped. There were a lot of powder. They've got their blue and green area up in the top, and then they've got the black down on the south side, the north facing stuff. And so we were skiing on that south side, and I saw that there was this goalie just kind of off the right side of the trail, and it dipped down, kind of came up a little bit, and then continued down in this ravine. I don't know necessarily what it is in the summertime, but it's just a goalie. Most of the time, people aren't skiing down in there because I think it's typical for everybody to just kind of stay on piste at this resort. And so as you ride up the chairlift, you can actually just see it off to the left side. And I've been scouting it and watching it this whole time. We even skied down to where this down slide or down sot of the knuckle was. Basically, I was thinking I could come off the lip up at the top and then come over this ravine and then over the knuckle and then on my downward slope. And so we went and we skied down in there, kind of looked at it, looked up from where it was, tried to guesstimate how high it was. And it was probably about 30 feet high, 35 feet. Um, and so I didn't necessarily think it was way too big, especially with the snow conditions that we were having. Um, but the biggest thing was for me to land on that downward slope. And so the first time I actually went up there, I I took off and I landed down at the lower part of the first vertical coming off the trail. It smashed down pretty hard, and you know I was able to shake it off. And I thought, okay, let's just go a little bit faster. Let's just go a little bit further because I landed in front of that knuckle, and
Yep.
so I felt like I had gauged it out well enough. Um, and so the second time as I came around, my wife and my dad both were there recording because they said, "Hey, get this on film. I think this is gonna be a sweet yap." And so my wife and my dad kind of skied down, posted up, my wife went over to the other side of this gully. My dad was just down the main trail, and as I waited for their cue, they hollered ready, and I just decided, I just went for it. I just knew I had to go a little bit faster, a little bit further. And as I came off the lip for whatever reason, I got into the back seat. Um, and in the video, you can see me going backwards and kind of like my feet going up in the air. Some people even asked if I was trying to backflip the thing, but that's not what I was trying to do. It's just because I kind of came off the lip a little bit weird, and I landed right on the knuckle to the left of some trees, on my butt, and it just compressed my spine, pushed them all, pushed my butt and my spine took the compression of the landing. Even though there was a lot of snow, um, there was like a tree stump or some other stuff that was below the surface of the snow later that I found out, that could have contributed to the impact. Um, and it basically, my bones crushed together and they blew out, bone pinched into my spinal cord, and just kind of crushed in there. It didn't sever my spinal cord, but it just crushed it and pinched in there. And so it took a little while to get me out of this crater, out of this hole that I was just impacted into, but they were able to get me out of there. uh, and mostly what I remember is just kind of pain and darkness, and just
Yeah.
pain and darkness.
Yeah.
Just my family asking if I was okay, if I could just get up, and I knew I couldn't get up. I knew that I had broke my back just because of how much pain was just shooting through my spine.
Yeah.
Um, and then I hear people asking if I could wiggle my toes, but it was even hard for me even to think about trying to wiggle my toes or trying to think about doing anything really at this point where there was just so much pain. Um, but the one point that I really do remember through this process was when the whole ski patrol team, my family were there. My sister and my brother-in-law actually were skiing by the bottom part of the trail. I was maybe 50 yards from this kind of like main trail, and they came and they
Yeah.
hiked up, and everybody was there to try and assess the situation, try and help out. But they just knew that they had to pull me up and out of this crater. But generally with spinal injury, you gotta stabilize and then pull.
Yeah.
Just do everything you can to stabilize and then take them off. But being inside the crater, they really couldn't do way too much except for kind of lift and pull me out of this before they could get me onto a backboard. And
Hmm.
just knowing that they had to lift and pull me up out of this hole with all this pain that I was already experiencing, um, it was a lot. And basically, when they did lift and pull me out, it just, some of that bone just being right there in the spinal cord just started, pushing and doing whatever else it was doing on my spine, just pushing on this major nervous system. I just remember just going even into a darker, like blacker place, um, because it was just like it was unreal. I couldn't even ex- like really truthfully describe how much pain was in that moment. But they got me up because it was something that we had to do. They got me onto the backboard. They took this backboard, took it down to the snowmobile. Snowmobile had to drive me up to their medical shack, which was up at the top of the resort. So I had to ride on the toboggan all the way up to their medical area, and my wife and my dad had to ski down to this lower lift. And actually, to get up to this upper area, they had to ride up the lift and hop on a shuttle and take the shuttle all the way back up to the main part of the resort. And um, so there was this time where we were separated, and my family didn't necessarily know really what was going on. And for me, they
Yeah.
took me up there. Ski patrollers were doing everything they could. By the time they got me up to the top, there was already an ambulance there waiting for me, and so they just loaded me into the ambulance, um, shipped me right down to the Beaver Hospital, which is a small town hospital. And I guess as I was going down this canyon, which is probably a 35-minute ride down the canyon into the town, my I think my dad and my wife and the family maybe had gotten back to the hotel room, hurrying through or into the lodge that we were staying in. They got there, threw their stuff in the truck, and they were going back up to meet me up at the top. But they saw the ambulance driving past. Um, Wait, rewind. Now that I'm trying to remember the story, because this is from their perspective. So I
Yeah.
think what had happened is when they were trying to take the shuttle up, they were trying to take the shuttle up to see me, is when they saw the ambulance going past, and so they knew that I had already been taken off. And then at that point, they realized they just had to hurry and pack up all their stuff and get out of there, and then meet me
Yeah.
down at the hospital. And then by the time they got down to the hospital, I had already been assessed. And at this hospital, they had a CAT scan machine, and that's when they noticed the bone was crushed into my spinal cord. And at that point, fortunately, they had painkillers and different things to help manage everything that I was going through. At this point, they said, "Hey, we can't do anything here at this little hospital. You're gonna have to go up to the university. No, up to what was it? It was Utah Valley Hospital, which is in Provo." And
Yeah.
so from Beaver to Provo, it's a 2-hour drive.
Yep.
And when I was in the Beaver Hospital, I was coherent enough at this point with the medications and different things to realize kind of what situation I was in. The other thing that I realized is that I had just turned 26, probably 5 months prior or 4 months prior to this, and I didn't get on to any insurance after being off my parents' insurance, and so I was uninsured at the time.
Well.
Um, and I knew that that was going to be a big problem ultimately. And so when I was down in the hospital, and they said, "Hey, we need to get you to to Utah Valley Hospital," I I was coherent enough to know that, if they're gonna fly me, because they wanted to fly me up there, it's like, if they're gonna fly me, that's gonna add a lot to the bill. And so I asked them if they could just drive me in the ambulance up there, because I figured it'd just be cheaper. Um, and it kind of sucked that I was having to feel this way and think about these things. And truthfully, I got to the Utah Valley Hospital, and that's where I met my mom, and my wife was there. We saw my mom, and my mom said, "Oh, everything's gonna be okay," because she works in healthcare, and she said, "Hey, it's all right. Don't worry about the costs because he's on insurance." And that was literally the first time that I had cried, like tears. At that point was because I was like, "No, I don't have insurance." I just, even though I was going through all this pain and everything, and lots of hollering and screaming through the pain, I didn't really cry until my mom said that, and I just thought about this unbearable weight of debts and different things that I'm just going to have to deal with on my own. And I just felt really bad. I felt bad that I didn't get on insurance. I felt bad that I was going to have to put my family through this. But basically, that's just kind of a side story. But
Yeah.
basically, while we were at the Utah Valley Hospital, they said they said it was going to be. They said, let's wait till he gets stabilized. Let's see his vitals. Let's watch the vitals. The neurosurgeon came in, and he said, "Okay, we're gonna have to pull this bone out. We're gonna have to fuse the spine, um, but we can't do it right now because he's just not stable enough." And so they kind of
Yeah.
kept me at Utah Valley Hospital. Kind of waited a day, A day went by. I still wasn't stable enough. Another day went by, and then yeah, it was the third day that they got me in for surgery, to go in and pull that bone out of my spinal column. And I just remember laying there on the bed, thinking, okay, this is I was coherent enough that I was just like, okay, first of all, I just want to eat, or I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, but I can't. They can't give me food, can't really give me water because they don't know when I'm going in for surgery. And I just remember them giving me ice chips every so often. And I was just like, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, like this is
Yeah.
a lot. It's been a lot of pain. There's a lot going on here.
You know,
But and I know
sorry
that.
sorry to interrupt you. The ice chip thing is funny to me because I've talked about on this podcast with other guests. We have so many similarities with our back injuries. Obviously, I'm walking today, and that's our major difference. But that's what I struggled with waiting to go into surgery. Just those freaking ice chips. It's like it's so ingrained in my mind. Like sitting there with the worst pain, my thoracic spine is burst fractured, and I'm waiting to go into surgery. And you can't eat, you can't drink water, and I was just savoring those ice chips in that little sponge.
Yeah, just a little bit. Even that little bit, you're like, oh my gosh, at least it's something.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Brody, tell me, you know, the injury happened up at the smaller resort. Did you end up down at the University of Utah at some point?
Yeah, I did end up at the University of Utah, after the neurosurgeon did the surgery there at Utah Valley Hospital, and then after I was there for about a week, in there, I forgot what the room is called, but it's just like post post
Post op.
surgery kind of
Yeah.
like. Yeah, after I was there and did a little bit of rehab inside there, we
Yeah.
decided that we were trying to figure out where should I go to get the best spinal rehab program. Oh, the one thing that I was going to tell you though is that, like, when I was laying there in this bed, just waiting for this surgery, the one thought that I knew that I couldn't move my legs, and I knew I couldn't wiggle my toes. I couldn't do any of that. And one thing that I was just waiting for was them just to get this freaking surgery done, because I thought that if they would just go in there and go and pull this bone out of my spinal cord and reconstruct it, that like everything would be okay. Like,
Yeah.
everything's just pull the bone out and it's just going to be okay. I'll be able to just get moving and just do some rehab and just be able to just get up and get going again. And I just remember that's what I just kept thinking when I was laying on the bed waiting for the surgery. But yeah, then
Yeah.
woke up after the surgery and still, no movement, no nothing. Um, yeah, and then did some rehab there for a week, and then my family just wanted to get me into some place that specialized with spinal rehab.
Yeah.
And so the University of Utah, was one of the contenders. The other one was Craig Hospital out in Colorado, because they've got a pretty good spinal rehab program from what we've all heard.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, ultimately I picked the University of Utah because it was close, and
Yeah.
so I could have friends and family come up, and just stay close with everybody around here.
Yeah. So your as I told you at the film festival, watching your film was incredibly impactful for me in like so many ways. And as I was sitting there, it was like taking me back. I was like taking a step back to 2016 when I broke my back. And the crazy thing is I'm sitting in this chair and I had never met you before and I didn't know your entire story. I'd seen things on social media, but I didn't know all the background of the story. And as your film was going on, was it January 16th?
Yeah, it was January. Yeah, January 23rd of 2016. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was March 16th of 2016 when I, you know, broke T2 through T8 in my thoracic spine and had that similar process of you of like I was at Park City, I was on the canyon side, over rotated a flip, and same thing, that feeling, that dark feeling of, oh my God, something is really wrong here. And everyone around you is kind of freaking out a little bit more. And the pain is so intense that you don't even know what to do with the pain. It's, you just start yelling. And, I've talked about on the podcast before the journey that I had on the toboggan connected to the snowmobile was like the worst 20 minutes of my life. Like, you could not draw up a worse 20 minutes for me. And watching your film and watching the pull away shot of the University of Utah at the same hospital that I was in, it was it was an eerie feeling to say the least. So, I absolutely tip my cap to you and everything that you're doing and what you're doing with Stio and everything you're doing with the adaptive community. It's pretty incredible, man.
Yeah, it was pretty wild to think that a traumatic experience like this, whatever it might be, can take you on a journey that you would never expect. It's gonna take you to a place um, of new opportunities, new doors that there are a lot of doors that are closed now. There's a lot of doors that won't ever be opened again, and sometimes it sucks to think about, but also let's just focus on what we do have access to and what we have available to us. And that's the one thing with this experience is seeing the adaptive community and knowing what's going on behind the scenes. Is I never would have had any insight to any of it if this didn't happen.
Obviously, since 2016, your life has changed completely in a lot of different ways, and learning a whole new way of life, being in the adaptive community, using a wheelchair. How was that transition coming from, skiing your whole life one way to now coming into sit skiing? And dude, I mean, in that film, you're ripping, like absolutely tearing it up. And it is inspiring to say the least. So how have things shifted, and how was going from being an everyday skier to a one skier? How long did it take you to transition and really learn the craft?
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting that you ask this. The well, I'll put a little context to it. As before my accident, my family was always like, he's a point his tips and go kind of person. Didn't really focus on technique way too much. Was just trying to go big, just trying to go hard, trying to send it off things. And then after my accident, they say I've become a more pretty skier. It's taken some time, obviously, that to be able to ski like at the level that I'm skiing at, it just doesn't always just come naturally to everybody, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of practice to get to that point.
Yeah.
Um, but the in the beginning, the transition was a little bit harder in a sense because I knew what the taste of being a big mountain skier was, and being off piste and being off in the powder and doing all this stuff, and then you got to wind it all back down to the basics. But in a sense, just like rolling it back to the basics really helped me focus on, like turning and the way that I'm edging and the way that my ski is moving, the way that my balance is weighted. There's just a lot to it when you just bring it back down to technique and that sort of thing. And I got fortunate because the guy that I trained with, he was the founder of Wasatch Adaptive Sports, and this
Oh,
guy is a total technical head. Like he focuses on the technicalities, and that's just kind of his jam. Um, and so I trained with him, and he knew that I had a background in skiing. Knew I had a background in teaching, even though I taught it, and I could teach kids how to ski. I could teach adults how to ski, but I never really focused on those sorts of things for myself. But so you rewind, now I'm starting kind of brand new with a knowledge of the way that skis work, a knowledge of the way pitch works, knowledge of the way snow conditions work. But so I started a little bit more so focusing on the technique and the way that I was riding the ski and using the edges of my ski, and I think that doing so actually helped bring me to be that the pretty skier, which a lot of those shots were beautiful, that we had in that piece. But probably the first season I was just learning it. I made it to a point where I could ski right up the tram and ski down Chips Run, which is just a blue run over there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it gets pretty steep in some places. I was skiing some blacks too, um, but nothing way too crazy, nothing particularly off piste. And then season two, I fortunately I have friends. My wife's sister works up at Snowbird. Her partner works up at Snowbird, who we're really good friends with. And so we'd go up there with them and their little ski and snowboard crew, and they were the ones who wanted to just go off and get me off piece. They're like, "Let's do it," and I'm like, "Let's go." Like, let's try it. We'll figure it out. At least I've got some friends here to help me out
Yeah.
through it. And so we'd start pushing it off piste a little bit, and then that's where I started leveraging the gear a little bit harder than it was used to, because most of this gear that I was using is like rental gear, basically through the adaptive program that I was skiing with. Um, and the other part about it too is, since it's not my own gear, the fitting of the gear is like going into rental boots.
Yeah.
And so if you're doing that, you have a limit to how well you can dial in, the control of your ski. And I really don't think that my personal like skiing abilities really tuned in until I had my own gear, which was probably 3 years into sit skiing. Um, and so I was able to get a grant for my own gear. The gear is really expensive, which kind of stinks, especially for people that are going through something like this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because most of the time, when you're going through these sorts of things, you got medical expenses and different things that are going on. You got to buy all new stuff just to manage living normal lives, let alone trying to go out and recreate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it probably wasn't until year three that I really started dialing most of it in.
What do you feel like has been your biggest achievement in sit skiing so far?
Hmm. I don't know. I mean, if we're just talking about just kind of being able to move like in the world of skiing, I'd say some of these sponsorships and things. I got a sponsorship with Snowbird probably five years ago, because they just saw me ripping around out there, and they wanted to get an adaptive rider on their team. And so fortunately I was able to get in on that, and they asked me to do that, and that kind of like perpetuated to getting in with some of the other brands and stuff. But um, I don't know. As it relates to like a technical level, I would say probably my greatest accomplishment is skiing some of these shoots. Skiing off in the cirque over at Snowbird.
Oh
Skiing
yeah.
Mineral Basin, just getting off into this big mountain stuff. And tree skiing, tight trees are a little bit hard because you got to lay those outriggers out, and so you're kind of limited on how tight of trees you can get into. But I
Yeah.
just like getting technical on the ski, and so I think in an aspect of that, that's probably I guess as it relates to skiing, my greatest physical accomplishment like that, but my greatest emotional accomplishment is probably going to be sharing the sport and getting, seeing this adaptive community, seeing other people uh, with disabilities and other families that have kids who are disabled and things like that, and get them to come out and get them to come ski with me, because I know that there's just like this healing aspect to getting people out and being outdoors. And then also, these families don't necessarily realize that they've got the resources available to them. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think sharing adaptive sports is going to be the greatest accomplishment, because ultimately I'm not going to be able to ski like the way that I ski right now for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And but I am always going to be able to share the sport. I am always going to be able to get other people to go out there and experience this level of independence. And I guarantee that's going to be much more rewarding than actually just the skiing in itself.
It's incredible, man. Truly, like what you guys are doing out there in Utah with adaptive sports and using, film and your platform to push this is it's been awesome to watch as an outsider. Um, and it's a weird thing for me at times. And I think I told you after I saw your film that it was like it was a an interesting emotional moment for me because when I had my injury, everyone around me was like, "You're incredible. You have no idea how lucky you are that you're still walking," and burst fractures and these things happening. And it, looking from an outsider's perspective of someone that's had a spine injury but not spinal cord, and watching what you guys are doing, it motivates me to want to just keep doing my thing and like keep spreading a message with people like you or people in the mental health and substance use community. My injury took me down a bit of a different route in terms of getting addicted to the Oxycontin and drugs I was prescribed. And, that's where a lot of my passion lies today, is spreading that message and giving people a platform to be able to talk about mental health and substance use problems. And there's so many parallels with that adaptive community where it's this small community that doesn't get a lot of attention at times. And it's fucking awesome what you guys are doing. I mean, like Trevor Kennison as well. Like you and Trevor are like the sit ski gods, and it's so freaking awesome watching you guys rip and like continue your passion for skiing far beyond anything you probably would have ever expected. Um, it's hard for me to even sit back and think like, whoa, if that day maybe I rolled 1 inch further or the piece of bone went towards the spinal cord and not out, like it's an emotional thought for me in a lot of ways, and I can't imagine the amount of emotional turmoil you went through in the beginning. Um,
Yeah,
but watching where you are today, it's truly incredible, man.
that's
It's
awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I feel like there's a lot of heavy times that we all kind of go through, and we all have our own personal struggles. We all have kind of that everybody's going to have their hardest point in life,
yeah,
whatever that may mean for you in your life. But usually what makes us who we are is how we take it from that point,
yeah,
and how we learn from what happened, and
yeah.
how yeah.
Like I was sitting after watching your film, I was sitting there with my girlfriend and talking about like so many people in this world have accidents. There's a lot of people that end up paralyzed in life, and there's two ways you can take it. You can either, you know, stay in that state of depression and really struggle And same thing goes with mental health or addiction. You can stay in those dark places, or you can do the exact opposite. And like the exact opposite is an inspiring thing that you're doing. Um, I yeah, I can't say it enough how much I've thought about your film in a lot of different ways, and it's been kind of at the top of my mind for like weeks now. Um, and I know that anyone that sees these films, the adaptive film you do with Stio, the one you did with Ski Utah, will feel the same way. So
Yeah,
you're
I'm excited to see how it's going to actually play out because your viewing of the Ski Utah one was the very first showing publicly of the thing, and I had heard that they'll probably roll out with a public link and doing all their stuff probably at the end of next month,
awesome.
is when they're thinking of coming out with it, and then I think the Stio one is going to come out in November at some point, and then that one just aired this Friday out in Jackson Hole, and it's going to be in this film fest. But it's cool because the two pieces work really well together.
Yeah,
Um, the one that you saw is on the heavy side. It's about my story and about getting back to it, and it does have those heavy undertones. But then yeah, this Dio one is just about the adaptive community because I really wanted to put some precedence on how we leverage each other and how we use each other for resources, and I think that it's important as it relates to like your mental health. Um, substance abuse. I have a lot of friends that have been through all sorts of substance abuse. Actually, one of them, he was an addict for a long time, went in and out of rehab plenty of times, but then he ended up becoming, like kind of making his way through it, and then became an administrator at the for the substance abuse program, and just has been rocking that. And dude, honestly, in the Ski Utah video, he's in that video. And when we're in the Wasatch Adaptive Room, you actually see him with guilt written all over his face. I'll tell you, because he accidentally left the back of my wheelchair on the top of my car that morning when we took up to go up and go get some early bird laps before the resort opened. And dude, the back of my wheelchair got trashed. And so he wrapped some duct tape around the back of my wheelchair, and he sure felt bad about it. And so I always tell him, I'm like, look at that guilt-ridden face of that guy right there. But this
yeah.
this is one of my best friends, who had gotten into heroin and different things like that. It started off, just probably with pills and different things like that, but went down that rabbit hole. But he was able to take that and learn from it, and then he actually uses these experiences that he went through just to relate, to
Yeah,
share. And I guess what I'm getting at, as it relates to any of this stuff, is to be able to share it and to be able to talk about it and to be able to not be yeah, to not throw a stigma behind it, like putting a stigma behind people in wheelchairs, to not put a stigma behind mental health, to not put a stigma behind substance abuse, and then just to be able to look at it and talk about it and see it candidly is probably the best way that we're going to be able to move forward with whatever it is that we're trying to grow on.
absolutely. And I think that's such an important part. The community aspect of all of this is what's so important. And you know, like kind of like you were saying, before you were directly involved in the adaptive sports world, you wouldn't have really known anything about it. And I'm not directly involved with it, but pieces like that you created or that Trevor Kennison or any of those guys are creating, it's starting to give a platform that like people are starting to learn about this stuff, and it is an important topic. And like having the resources to get people out on the mountain, I was just talking to Ski Colorado on a a phone call the other day on a Zoom call, and we were talking a lot about like barriers to entry into skiing, and it's it's incredibly expensive to, in terms of barriers to entry, in terms of cost of normal skiing. And I can't imagine what it is with sit skiing, like that, you mentioned that gear is expensive. So these adaptive sports programs that are being created and grant funding and stuff like that is extremely important. And that stuff only happens by people knowing about it, and people advocating for it. So that community aspect of talking about it is huge.
Yeah, and then also often, as somebody's going through these programs, even in that sense, they don't necessarily know, well, which grant program could I go to try and get this, but they learn through the people that have been through it. They say, hey, yeah, Brody went through it, and talk to who he went to get his grant for his sit ski. The same thing goes with my mountain bike. I've got a bowhead, which is super. This mountain bike's $17,000 for the mountain bike. It's the same one that Trevor has as well. But yeah, there's no way. Like I don't have $17,000 to spend on a bike, but um, programs like the Kelly Brush Foundation, and the High Fives Foundation, they they're just out there. There's other ones like Challenge Athletes Foundation, but a lot of these grant programs will specialize in some of them, like Kelly Brush's spinal cord injury. Um, I don't know if High Fives is spinal cord injury specific, but yeah, but just being involved in the community, or other people that are dealing with kind of the same thing that you're going through is going to be usually the best place for resources and information.
Absolutely. It it's the same thing in my world. Like the there's a famous quote from a TED talk that a mental health professional says, and he says the opposite of addiction in mental health is connection. And I feel like that goes with anything, any trauma in life, whether it's a sports related injury, adaptive sports, addiction, mental health, any of these things. Community and connection, it it truly does heal, and it's what saved my life, and gets me up every morning thinking like, whoa, this is gonna be cool. Like waking up today thinking, wow, I get to do a podcast with Brody. Like that's cool. Like another person that I met in a totally random way at a film festival. It's those small connections that I've made over the years, or the reason I'm here today. Um, and I the the support that has come from the community for what I'm doing has been awesome. Watching the support that you're getting is just, it's awesome, man. People are, I feel like, that word stigma is an interesting one, and that dial is starting to turn a little bit, that people are less judgmental right off the rip and more like open to hearing what we have to say. Um,
Yeah.
so outside of skiing, who's Brody? What's your day to day look like? What do you do for work? What's Brody outside of skiing?
Yeah, outside of skiing, I mean, the family life is huge, obviously. And I was thinking about this though, as you were just talking about the stigma. I know that my entire mental capacity has totally changed once I had this little guy, back in February. It was actually while we were filming the Stio thing. We were almost finished with the Ski Utah thing, but literally right in the middle of filming with Stio, my wife was 6 weeks away from giving birth. We were supposed to shoot the shop scene that morning at like 10 a.m. But at 6 o'clock that morning, my wife said my water broke. I'm like, oh my gosh! Like, here, all right, here we go. And then Yeah, and that's totally changed my life. This little guy, um, yeah, he had a little bit of complication through the birthing process, and had a subgaleal hemorrhage, which is a bleed between the scalp and the skull. And basically, they took care of it. They knew what was going on in the hospital, and they were able to take care of it there. And it was just a little bit scary. They gave him a transfusion, but he was doing good. And they're like, okay, cool, like he's set. But just going through that one experience, just being a new father, brand new father, day one, with this like scary thing that's just happened to you, it just totally changes your perception on things. And then I was also, when you made that comment, this about how the stigma has been changing too. That's where I realized that, like, if I'm just saying, like, if I'm watching Cops or something, instead of being like, oh my gosh, look at that girl's on crack, or whatever, I'm more like, oh my gosh, that was somebody's baby. Like, what
Yeah,
happened to that girl in her life, that that made her, that ended her up in this position right now. And it's crazy how having a baby just changes your life, and your perspective. I mean, not that everybody
yeah,
has to have babies to have this perception change,
yeah,
but in a sense, like, having this deeper emotional connection to something that's not your own life, it's just like, makes me realize that, maybe we all got to try and get onto a level like that with each other, so we can understand a little bit more, as to why we're in these certain positions. But sorry, I was like, I don't know. I was just thinking about that.
yeah.
But yeah, so family life is is huge. Like, we're just trying to get this little guy. He's 7 months old now. We're excited to get him up onto the slopes already, because my wife, she was a junior free ride skier, and so me and her, we've always kind of been back and forth between who can ski better than the other, whatever. But it's always just been skiing is just a huge passion in the family. In my daily life, I work for a family business. We do subcontracting, and I started off as a laborer in the business, but then after my spinal cord injury, I realized, that I couldn't labor for the business anymore. But I decided that if I can't labor for the business, that doesn't mean I still can't work for the business, and I can't think for the business, and I can't, do these sorts of things. So I need to go get a degree in business. And so I went to school at Utah Valley University and got a degree in business management. And I was able to go to school, learn things. Obviously, I had to do my generals. Not a ton of the generals I was able to implement into business management. But then, once I started on the second part of my degree, where it's all strictly business, I was able to go and take these lessons that I was learning for business and implement it into this template. Really, it was like a raw platform, because it um, started off with just a few guys, but we've been able to kind of crank it up and streamline things. And I was able to build out all these processes, and so we've got we've got two branches now, the one in Orem and one in St. George, and it's just like, that's kind of what I do for my daily gig, is subcontracting, and
Awesome.
basically administrative work on that end, um, and that pays my bills. Unfortunately, I've put a lot into place where I can make things flexible, so that during ski season I can just get out and go rip around. But yeah, I mean, we're an outdoorsy family. Love to just get out and go explore, really, and just get up into the mountains and stuff. We used to camp a lot, but since the accident, it's just kind of harder to get around, like, campsites and go out and do things in the wheelchair, and so we really haven't camped a ton. But I think that this mountain bike that I got is going to help us, at least kind of crank that up a little bit more, because um, it just gets around on the dirt really easy. Um,
Yeah, those bikes are badass.
yeah,
I've
seriously,
I've seen some videos. Those
they
things are
rip.
cool.
Yeah, they've got some great engineering behind them. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, soon. But now that I have that bike, my wife wants an e-bike, and we'll probably get a little, one of those bike trailers,
Yep.
uh, take the kid around. But I mean, lately, a lot of since he's still little, like a lot of what we've been doing with, and since we're first time parents too, we're still spending a lot of our time trying to figure out the parent life. Uh,
Yeah.
trying trying to watch some more Bluey or something, like trying to figure out what like kind of kids shows we'll jam on because we're
Yeah.
like we see by our cousins or whatever, and they're all singing all these baby songs to the kids, and we're like, oh shit, like maybe we should start doing better.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to
That
learn more baby songs.
yeah, the parent life I'm sure is takes up a lot of your time. Um
Hmm.
that's an exciting period. I don't have any kids. I don't know if I'll be having kids all too soon. I'm enjoying the parentless life at the moment, but I'm excited in the future to have kids.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like
I mean,
just hearing you say like teaching your kid how to ski and getting them out on the mountain like that will be such a special experience for you,
yeah,
to be able to get a little kiddo out in the mountain and teach him everything that you know about the mountains and the outdoors. That's a special time for sure.
yeah. I mean, I think about that and like how passionate I've been about sharing the adaptive sports with other kids' parents that have disabilities and things like that. And like now I've got a whole nother level. I gotta just teach this little guy. I gotta do it on my own instead of telling other people's parents, about it.
Yeah,
I'm like now I got this true opportunity to really like get this guy out, and I'm just excited now because I'm like, oh, I haven't ever taken him out to Colorado, or I haven't ever done this, and all this stuff that I take for kind of for granted in some senses. I just don't want to anymore. I want
yeah,
to I want to make sure that he experiences it. So yeah, that's cool.
that's
That's
awesome.
awesome to hear that you say that. I mean, I get it. Like, not everybody is meant to be a parent. Not everybody needs to be a parent. Not whatever. It was
Yeah,
just one thing that my wife and we were kind of. Yeah, I guess a little bit more context to that is that we did in vitro to get the little guy here. So and there was like a conscious decision in our life to be like, okay, let's like let's do it. We're gonna be parents now, and so I mean that was a whole process in of itself.
yeah,
But you know, so some people don't mean to be parents, and some people do mean to be parents. But most of the time we figure it out.
yeah. That is so awesome, man. I'm excited to see from the outside your kid growing up and learning to ski, and uh, you know, I hope I'm a dad someday. So
Cool.
uh,
That's awesome.
I'll reach out to you in like 10 years, when I'm ready, and I'll get all the tips.
Oh yeah. How old are
Yeah,
you?
I'm 27.
You're 27.
Yeah.
Okay. So how old were you when you had that spinal injury then?
Oh man, I was 19.
19.
Yeah, I was
Wow.
19. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
20.
so I
Yeah,
was I was
19.
20 I was 26 when I had mine, and 34 when I had this little guy. So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. It's been a wild ride since 2016. I think for both of us,
Mm-hmm.
in some parallels, some not parallels, and it's pretty cool to see where we're at today. Being able to sit here and tell the tale, and hopefully people listen to this and learn something that they can take away for their day, and um,
Yeah, yeah. I think so. Yeah. I honestly I just love sharing my story. Anytime that I get the opportunity to. And I just know that the thing is we always, like I said, we always have our trials, we always have our struggles. But the one thing that I really do push whenever I'm doing anything like this is that we just got to take the chance to maximize the things that we do have,
Yep.
instead of sulking on the things that we don't have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've always had a motto, and the motto's been adversity to adventure.
Hmm.
Because it's just like, how is it that these adverse times, that the cards that are maybe dealt unfairly or badly, I guess it's nothing's ever fair, but these cards that you get a bad deal on, we can't deal with what we're dealt, but we can choose how we handle what we're dealt. We can choose the cards, and we can
I
try and
love
figure out the
that.
best way to play what we've got. And you just go all out with what you got.
Adversity to adventure. I feel like I should get that like tattooed on me.
Oh yeah, do it right under your eyeball. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Like a Post Malone thing.
Yeah,
Oh, do
exactly.
adversity, and then you can do two on your nose and adventure on the other side.
Exactly. Yeah. It would be my first tattoo. That might be wild going right across the bridge of the nose, but I've been known to do crazier things. So, Brody, if there's one piece of advice you could leave for someone listening to this podcast, you know, maybe somebody in the adaptive sports community that's listening to this, if there's one piece of advice or takeaway from your experience that you can leave with the audience, what do you think it would be?
um, I would say that it's okay to be sad, and it's okay, even though I said maximize the things that you do have and don't try not to soak on the things that you don't. It's okay to be sad about it. It's okay to hurt about it. It's okay to feel your feelings, because sometimes it's easy for me just to get caught up in just the go go go, that all of a sudden when the smoke settles or the dust settles, that you can take some time to feel what you're feeling, and then just you know listen to it, feel it, and then let's just know that you're going to move forward and know that you're going to move on. Recently, I had a friend who her husband had died of cancer. It was actually my best friend's sister. He had died of cancer, but I do know that with her, right after he died, it was, well, probably like 3 or 4 months ago that he died, and then they had the funeral. They had all the stuff. Family was around, all this, and then as soon as family, all the dust settled, it's probably when it was the heaviest for her. Is because it just goes quiet, and that was the same for me. Is it all happened? It was all going on right there. I was in the hospital. I always had somebody there, but as soon as I got out of the hospital and kind of that dust had settled, and I was just there alone by myself, that's it was heavy. It was really hard to deal with, because it's just me on my
Yeah.
own. But I just felt it, and I went through it, and then I called my family and I said, hey, I need some help right now, because this is just really hard.
Mm.
And they came back around, and we moved on. And then it still happens, as chipper as and exciting as a, like, generally, I'm so stoked about life and about people and about all those sorts of things, and everybody may think that, oh, he's just always just so happy. I'm like, yeah, I'm usually happy when I'm with other people. I'm usually stoked when somebody else is stoked, but I still have hard times. I still have moments when I get jammed up. I can't reach something that I need to reach, and there's nothing I can do. And it sucks. I get frustrated, but all right, then, like, next time I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna make sure we don't ever store that up there, because I need it down here. And it just change whatever it was that was making me feel that way, or try and find solutions, so I don't end up in those situations again. And so I would say, yeah, just feel your feelings and listen to them, but work through them, and then also figure out ways to mitigate those things from happening again, the ones that get you into those dark, heavy places. Um, because why would you want to go back there? Why would you want to be in those places? Um, but sometimes you just end up there, and so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And, I think that's an important way to look at a lot of adversity in life. Reshaping that mindset and having the mindset that I say this a lot, but it's okay to not be okay. And I think as humans, I think men especially feel that feeling that it's not okay to like show emotion. Um, I talk to men in the recovery community all the time where that's their sentiment. Like it's not okay for them to cry or have emotions and have those feelings. And I think that is an important thing for people to realize when they're struggling with adversity. Like it's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. Um, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I think both of us are testaments to that in different ways. That you can be in the darkest depths of an injury, addiction, what have you, and you can find your way out. And like, not every day is going to be perfect. That's for sure. I think I still struggle with a lot of things today, and same with you, and that's part of life. And that's how we navigate it is I think, as to your sentiment, it's what makes us who we are today.
Yeah,
So yeah. Um, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today, man. Uh,
absolutely.
I've been looking forward to this a lot since I saw your film and had the ability to connect with you and meet your dad. It's been a heavy topic on my mind, and it's really freaking awesome to see what you've done on the flip side of all of this. Um,
Yeah,
I tip
yeah.
my metaphorical hat to you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll tip my literal hat to you.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man, and I was excited about the opportunity for sure. And it's always nice to share whatever I can. Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
Well, thank you to all the listeners. As always, this episode will be coming out, I believe, on Wednesday, Brody. So, um,
nice. Might as well
yeah,
throw my Instagram out in it.
yeah,
Brody_Snowbird.
Brody underscore Snowbird, and I'll put it in the show notes and everything for the listeners, and they can follow along. So when these films come out to the public, they can watch and follow along as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm supposed to post more. I need to post more,
Yeah,
but usually I just go. But yeah, definitely follow me, and then so at least they can see the films when they come out. So
absolutely. Well, thank you to all the listeners. Falling off the floor with Brody Broderick. We are out.